This is Charlie Crockett, Texas musician and descendant of Davy Crockett, inviting you to visit the Alamo. It's not the same Alamo you, remember. There's lots of new things to experience, like the 500 artifacts inside the Alamo exhibit at the Ralston Family Collection Center, the new Mission Gate and Lunette outdoor exhibit, and Surrounded, the Alamo Augmented Experience. It's all part of an ongoing restoration and expansion that will write the Alamo's next chapter. So don't wait. Plan your visit today at thealamo.org.
Stories Bigger Than Texas, the Alamo Podcast. For the past 6 months, the Alamo's Archaeology team has been excavating the area just outside the Alamo Church, the perimeter of one of the world's most famous historic structures. Today, we reveal the astounding discovery from the Spanish mission, the pieces of weapons unearthed from the world-famous Battle of the Alamo, and the work still to come that will bring forward new information on a more modern era of Alamo history. I'm your host, Emily Baucom. Today we are joined by Dr. Tiffany Lindley, the Alamo's Director of Archaeology, and Gabriella Zaragosa, an Alamo staff archaeologist. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having us.
I'm happy to be here.
Tiffany, your team has been busy. When we last spoke, you had just finished up excavations outside the lawn barrack in advance of drainage work, and your team discovered how many artifacts?
Well, gonna break it here first. We have finally finished the cataloging process, and we have a total count of artifacts, and that total count is 225,026 individual artifacts.
Wow.
And sometimes we hear these big numbers and we're like, yeah, but maybe those are teeny tiny pieces. Well, I also have a weight for you. So the weight of all of those artifacts is 1,143 pounds.
Whoa! That you guys pulled out of the dirt with your hands.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's an incredible amount. I can't stop smiling because it's just so much. I'm so proud of the team that, worked on that project for almost a year and a half in the field, and now looking forward to the next steps, which is all of the analysis.
What takes place in the analysis phase?
Well, it depends on which artifact class we're looking at. So for example, ceramics. Ceramics are one of my favorite. So during the analysis phase, we look at different attributes of that ceramic. So we're gonna look at, where it was found, what depth was it found, so we can associate the type of ceramic with specific deposits. We're looking at the exact type of the artifact itself, looking at colors, looking at the paste. So the paste is what we call essentially what makes up that ceramic. So clay, water, different types of timber, which could be crushed rock or crushed bone, crushed ceramic, something that helps bind that clay together.
Say the poundage again.
1,143 pounds.
And that's fascinating when you consider that you guys are taking fragments of things in many cases, like fragments of ceramics, fragments of different artifacts.
Oh yeah, it's crazy to think about all of that material. I believe a ton is 2,000 pounds, so we have a little over half a ton of material.
That's amazing. You found a lot of cool things like musket balls from the 1836 Battle of the Alamo, and you just identified 2 parts of guns?
Yes, this is one of the exciting things that happens during the cataloging phase and then specifically in the analysis phase. But as we're taking artifacts out of the ground, as we're washing them in the lab, those initial phases, get the artifacts out, clean them, we'll look at them later. So this is now later, and there are a few metal fragments that hadn't been identified as anything, probably because they were really dirty or caked with things. So whenever those metal parts were pulled out again, looking at them and realized that they were gun parts. And so we have 2 pieces that are lock plates. And so the lock plate goes on the musket itself. It's where the hammer is screwed into, and the hammer holds your gun flint. So the lock plate's a pretty important piece of the weapon. And we found 2 pieces. One of the lock plates was really interesting because it actually had 2 of the screws corroded in place. So you still had them on the lock plate itself, and you still had that hammer that was screwed into the lock plate. So that was really, really exciting to see 2 lock plates. And then we also identified 2 trigger guards from different weapons. So those are really exciting. And anytime we find something that's related to weaponry, I always have to call in our Alamo expert, Colby. And what's really kind of exciting about this is it was his birthday. And so
Colby Lanham, senior researcher and historian, born on September 11th.
yes, so I brought the trigger guard to him. I was like, you've got to see this. And he identified it as the trigger guard from a brown bess.
Whoa. I'm sure our listeners are super excited to see that. We're going to post some photos in the podcast notes. Gabriella, you are one of the team leads in the field. Tell us what your job is like and also your favorite find from the Lomberg project.
I wake up really early at
Beat
about
the heat.
4:45, yeah, because it does get hot. It's a lot of hard work.
It
that
is.
our
You're in the
crew does.
sun all day. You are digging. You are pulling things out, like I said, with your bare hands, more than 1,000 pounds from the Lomberg alone.
Exactly. I mean, that's all like hand digging. And a lot of the times we have guests to say, oh, y'all use shovels or hand tools? And yeah. So they'll see like the units and they're so surprised that we're going about 5 feet below surface. Every day is different. I always like to tell people, you don't know if there's going to be random rain, the weather.
Weather does impact your job.
It does. And so have to like wrap up, close up shop sometimes. And then we go to the lab just depending on the day. So you got to be on your toes. And
But I have seen you out there on the hottest days of summer, and you're still so excited to be out there. It's the thrill of the hunt, I guess.
It is. It is. And a lot of guests, they'll ask like, oh, is this what you studied? I say, yes, we're all professional archaeologists out here. This is what we studied and it's a passion. And I think that's what separates it. Like I said, waking up early in the morning, I got to love what I'm doing to commit to that 4:45.
For sure. And then your favorite find from the Lomberg project.
Favorite find. There's so many amazing finds, both artifacts and structural features. For me, I, like Tiffany with the ceramics, there were 2 ceramics. There was the punctated sherd that was likely East Texas origin, and then decorative Goliad. It shows evidence of cultural networking, or we don't typically find Goliad ware that's decorative here on site. So those 2 ceramic sherds, they're very significant because for me, one of my interests is looking at community. And so having physical evidence of groups being here at the Alamo is fascinating. I think that's really going to teach us a lot more about the people that occupied here at the Alamo.
That they were real people, moved around, and had
Yeah.
real lives. The archaeology team is now focusing on excavations around the perimeter of the Alamo Church. Tiffany, why is that work taking place?
So we have a lot of work planned at the Alamo Church. The overall project is conservation and preservation of the Alamo Church. It's really important that we make sure these structures stay here for many, 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 many years to come. So before all of that conservation and preservation work can happen, the archaeology team is going around the exterior only of the church, and we're digging these excavation units to make sure that before any types of necessary construction, such as a drainage system, anything that might require ground disturbance, that area is first cleared, doing air quotes, cleared of any cultural resources. So we want to make sure that we recover as many artifacts and we document all of the soil deposits. We document any buried features so that we have that information.
You mentioned that this is only the exterior of the church. It's not the interior. And when did your team start?
We started in March, right after commemoration. I believe it was March 10th. We started our first phase of work, and that first phase of work was in advance of foundations for a temporary protective enclosure that will span over the Alamo Church so that removal of the church's roof can happen, but the church itself will still be protected from the elements. So that protective enclosure will require foundations below grade. We need to make sure that that's not going to disrupt any cultural resources. So we started all of those excavations in March. We finished those in about July and started the next phase, which is in advance of the drainage system. And it's also really important that we finish all of our work in advance of final designs for things like a drainage system, because if we encounter a feature, say a wall foundation from the Hugo Schmelzer store or a police substation, that we make sure that our design team knows that those features exist and they can design around the features so that we don't have to impact them.
And you definitely have found features like that. You've already made some incredible discoveries. One of them you are calling one of the top 5 finds of your career. We've got to know, what is it?
I am so excited about this feature. And yeah, it's definitely top 5. And I've been in archaeology for a while, and I've worked at some amazing sites, found some amazing things. But this was incredible. And one of the archaeology units that was the north side of the church in the convento courtyard. We were digging only about maybe 18 to 24 inches below surface and encountered an intact adobe paver surface. And they were beautiful. And in fact, Gabriella is the one that first identified those adobe
Tell us about
pavers.
that.
It was a trip because they're so beautifully intact. At first, they started like peeking out because we did have a little sneak peek in the profile wall of one of our units. And then we had the opportunity to explore further to see how deep they go because we only had like a side profile. Well, when I got to that color change in the soil, that's when I kept my eyes peeled. I'm like, okay, I think this is where we're going to encounter. I thought it was only going to be just like one brick, one paver, but no, it expanded beautifully throughout like most of the unit that we were excavating. But as soon as I started encountering it, I was like, oh, I think I messaged Tiffany right away. I'm like, oh my God, you need to come here like fast.
We were talking a second ago about real people living their real lives here, and this is something they would have walked on.
Yes. Yeah, it's fascinating. I always like to say, without the people, there would be no archaeology. It's very important to incorporate that and to put yourself in the position. And I remember when we fully exposed the adobe pavers, we had some of the archaeologists on our team or all of them were like, hey, look, you need to check this out. And we had some of the crew work additionally on some of the pavers. And one tip, for the sensitivity of the pavers, we were in our socks because we don't want our boots to disrupt the integrity of the pavers. And I told one of the archaeologists, I said, isn't that wild? You're walking on, a floor, something that other people, they laid down, you see brick by brick or how they laid it out and you're on it. And everyone got the chills of it's that realization of oh yes, why we do archaeology. It's not for the glory. It's to uncover what was forgotten or we didn't know, to expect that.
I'm guessing this wasn't on a map somewhere.
No. It was pretty unexpected. There had been some previous archaeology work in that area, and they had encountered these clay brick tiles, which is completely different than these adobe pavers. So when we came across them, we're like, holy smokes, it's wild. And one point to make is that they are still there. We preserved them in place. So this is something that we didn't want to remove. And we told everyone, you got to work around it. We're not taking these out. So they're preserved in place. In addition to that, the pavers extend into areas that we did not excavate. So there's potential for further research. On down the line, there could be additional excavations to reveal the pavers in their entirety to see how far out do they expand. Because even the area that we exposed, it's a pretty large area, in a place like the Alamo where there's been a lot of work, a lot of living. Whenever we encountered these and we have, like I said, it's about 18 to 24 inches below surface. And then, thinking, okay, if those pavers would have been an actual walking path and you're looking around and, I don't know, putting it all into context in that courtyard, it's pretty awesome. We do have one historical impact to the pavers. There was a ceramic or clay pipe right down the middle of these pavers that really bisected these two sections. And looking at previous reports, archaeology reports and archival information, it looks like that clay pipe was from the Hugo Schmelzer store, which is still historic. So you have a historic impact to the even more historic pavers. But we even left the ceramic pipe there so that we can have that in perpetuity.
And this is a good time to ask, Gabriella, I've noticed you and the team working around utility pipes. Tell us about all these pipes and why they are so common in certain parts of the site.
They are fun to work around because it limits our mobility within the unit. It can create a game of twister and archaeology yoga in some areas because it's kind of challenging to excavate. But it's a reminder that we have utilities at the Alamo. We can see when, for example, with the sewer pipe, when that sanitation was installed, that historical significance, and then electricity as well. I think it often gets overlooked too, the historical significance of the installation of electricity and irrigation and sanitation, but it's also significant too because the historical utilities, they were smaller as opposed to when construction installs utilities today. It's almost like back then they surgically excavated 6 inches wide.
As opposed to a 3-foot pipe we see today.
3 foot. Sometimes we're at construction sites where they'll dig 8 feet wide to put in a 3-foot pipe. So the people of the past installing utilities, they did us a favor because below the utilities, we'll encounter the limestone structures. And then you'll see where it was like surgically like removed, a rock may have been tossed out because they just had a small window. So they're probably just thinking, oh, it's a limestone rock, toss it. And then with us in our excavations, we have that wider window. And so we see like, oh, wow, they took like one rock, but then you see a beautiful limestone alignment. So they did us a favor by not destroying history. But yeah, we encountered them almost every unit, and there's like a plethora of them.
And I will say, we do understand that construction today and utilities today obviously are having to accommodate a larger population. So that's why they have to be larger. So we do understand that.
Great point. Looking ahead, your team is going to excavate the area outside the south wall of the Alamo Church. And for those who don't know, in the late 1800s, there used to be a police substation there. So you will literally be digging into a newer era of Alamo history.
Yeah, this one's really exciting. I've been kind of falling down the research rabbit hole with Colby, and we found the police substation is on the Sanborn Fire Insurance maps. The earliest is 1885. And by 1904, it's gone. It's not on those maps anymore. So that's a pretty small period of time that this police substation was active. We have encountered what appears to be the wall foundations of that police substation, which spanned that south side of the church. So that's pretty exciting. And I think that's a little, it's a blip in the Alamo history and occupation of the site, but still it's a part of the site. And, I think it just is more evidence of how important the site was for so many reasons. So there's the historical significance, but also it's the middle of downtown, right? So it's a great location as well. So, that police substation's late 1800s, and it's a nice little addition to our knowledge.
What you find will flesh out what we know about the commercialization era of the Alamo in the late 1800s.
I think so.
Every October, we celebrate Texas Archaeology Month, and we nurture the next generation of archaeologists. That is top of mind for you.
Yes, so October is a very busy month, I think, for all Texas archaeologists. There's a lot of events going on statewide. So if anyone, it's particularly, those with kids or, teachers, I'm sure you can find an archaeology event nearby. So for us, since we are literally knee deep in archaeology units, we did not have the capacity to have a large event on site like we did last year. So we really focused on doing the pinch pot kits. And this is something that we've done now, I think, is it's either our third or fourth year.
Yeah.
The Texas Historical Commission has a group that focuses on Texas Archaeology Month. And one of their resources is handing out pinch pot kits. So I've worked with them to create these kits, and then we distribute them to schools. And what's really great about the Alamo site is we have a fabulous education department. And through their work, they were able to reach out to several teachers and schools. I want to say there is a teacher or school from every district in San Antonio that we were able to get pinch pot kits to.
How many total?
A little over 2,000.
Wow. So more than 2,000 local students are going to experience this.
It's a really, really awesome resource because, one, it's completely free for teachers. And there's a lot of students that in K through 12, especially I would say the elementary school, that might not be exposed to archaeology. I know personally, I didn't know archaeology was a job you could have until I got to college. Getting that exposure to students, and especially the free resource for teachers.
We've talked about you're working in the elements. It's hot. It can be rainy sometimes. There's just a lot going on in your job. And to slow down for a second and to help students unlock a possible new career path with archaeology, what does that feel like?
Oh, that's exciting. I love talking to students and getting them excited about archaeology, and teachers too, because I think there's probably even teachers that don't realize that that's a career path. Mm-hmm. It's awesome that San Antonio has so much great archaeology. We have the missions here. There's a lot of opportunities for students to really grow this passion. And I always, I have talked to a lot of different teacher workshops and told them, hey, if you have a student who, they're really into history, but they're also really into science, but they also really are into art, It's one of those, they like everything. You see them as someone that's not just sitting in an office. They want to be outdoors. This could be the perfect path for them. So it's really exciting. And anytime I have an opportunity to work with students, I always say yes.
Yeah, definitely. It's very rewarding, like you said, with the teachers to have the opportunity and the parents. Recently, a guy I was working with for construction, he was like, oh, my son wants to get into archaeology. And I was like, really? Yeah, it is a job. It is a career. And I told him too, like, hey, be on the lookout for October because there's archaeology events going on around town. You just gotta look for them. Here we'll have some things. And it's always nice to see like the parents, because I know my parents, shout out to my parents. And they're like, okay, well, what's it gonna be like? What kind of jobs are out there? But there are plenty of jobs out there. You gotta excavate. You gotta look for them.
You gotta dig in.
You gotta dig in, exactly. They are there, especially like Tiffany mentioned, San Antonio is just rich in archaeology. There's a lot of opportunities. Being able to provide like those free resources to parents, students, teachers, it's amazing.
Dr. Tiffany Lindley and Gabriella Zaragosa, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be sure to check out the podcast notes. We have linked to new photos of some of the discoveries we've talked about today, like the adobe pavers and the gun parts. Also, be sure to follow the Alamo on Facebook, Instagram, or X to see our weekly archaeology updates. You've been listening to Stories Bigger Than Texas, the Alamo Podcast.